I was rushing through busy city streets to get to the bus station. I had planned a relaxing vacation to the countryside, where I would spend my time touring historic homes. In making the arrangements for my vacation, I was careful to plan out every step. The transit company had helped me pick out the ideal route from my city to the countryside. A friendly receptionist had suggested that I book a stay in a historic house that doubled as a bed and breakfast. Having booked all the portions of my trip and double-checked my bus reservations, I went to bed last night and fell asleep quickly. Unfortunately, I'd forgotten to set my alarm clock before I went to bed. It was a silly oversight. It was stupid that I didn't do one simple thing to ensure my journey started off smoothly. I was disappointed in myself because even though I packed the majority of my belongings last night, I didn't have enough time to shower or dress nicely this morning. I had to put on some old tracky dacks and rush out of the house. Shoving my way down the crowded streets to the bus terminal was trying. Disappointed by a bad start to my day, I didn't have the energy to really pay attention to my surroundings. I had already given up on the day being good. And then I started worrying. I started worrying about the length of the bus ride and whether or not I'd get motion sickness along the way. I was caught up in my thoughts a block or so from the terminal when I stopped dead in my tracks. Through a shop window, I saw something that truly dismayed me. As the train rolled out of the station, my eyes stayed fixed on the platform behind me. I wondered if I'd really made the right decision. It had been a rough week at work, and now I wasn't even sure if a vacation was really such a good idea after all. What if the castle wasn't everything I had expected it to be? What if I couldn't find my hotel, or I wasn't comfortable there over the course of the weekend? Taking time off at work to go on vacation suddenly seemed like a silly idea. The train continued on its journey. I was still trapped in my dour thoughts when I realised that I haven't even thought to research the train's travel plan. I had no idea what cities or areas we would pass through prior to reaching the castle. In my mind, I played back news reports about train crashes in the wilderness. I couldn't possibly find my way to civilization if the train wrecked because I had no idea where the train was going. I suddenly realised that I didn't know much about the castle's history either. It was entirely possible that the noble family who had lived there were monsters. I remembered reading Dracula and how unsuspecting the hero of the story was when he first visited the enchanted castle in Transylvania. My thoughts on vampires, werewolves and spirits, I looked out of the train window only to see that the entire train car was shrouded in a deep fog. The lights in the train suddenly went out and I was plummeted into a horrifying darkness. My only thought was that I had no idea where I was or where I was going. Though I'd grown up in the tropics, I'd never seen a plantation before. I was awestruck by the beauty that confronted me on my first plantation visit. Rich emerald green lawns stretched up to the front porch. Beautiful banyan trees dotted the yard while a huge fruit orchard stretched out behind the main plantation house. No one else was parked in the lot, so I headed up to the stepping stone walk to the plantation house alone. I was excited about the journey to come, but I was also worried. What kind of secrets did the plantation hold? What might I encounter once inside? Having never visited a plantation before, I wasn't sure what to expect. It was a good 10-minute walk to the plantation's beautiful front doors. During the walk, I thought about all the troubling things that I might encounter in the plantation house. I had heard of the spirits of slaves haunting such houses, but I hoped that I didn't fall victim to a ghost. I wanted to come away from this brief visit refreshed and feeling healthier than I had before leaving my house. Even though it was warm outside, I felt a chill as soon as I entered the plantation house. There was a visitor station, but no employee was there to greet me. For the time being, I was all alone. I picked up a brochure on the house's layout and began my exploration. As soon as I entered the first hallway, I knew something was wrong. I heard familiar voices pulling me towards a dimly lit room at the end. I wanted to resist going any further, but I was afraid that I couldn't. I walked cautiously towards the room. closing my eyes and taking a deep breath when I reached the door. Was it really what I thought it was? The forest stretched out for miles beyond the road. The cool air filled my lungs and renewed my energy. I was ready to walk into the forest and to find the cottage I had booked for a weekend stay. The rental agent had given me general directions, and I was sure I could find it by myself. If I had some idea of the direction in which I was going, I could usually reach my destination. I stepped into the forest with little trepidation. I was enchanted by the beautiful plants and trees that surrounded me. I knew I should walk quickly to get to my cottage before nightfall, but I simply wanted to stop and admire the beauty of everything around me. I've always been prone to distraction. I was so taken in by the exotic appearance of the flowers in the forest that I lost track of time. When I looked up at the sky, I realised that the sun was already beginning its downward descent. Panic set in immediately. I was all alone in a forest with which I was not familiar. I had no idea which direction I'd come from or which path might lead me to my cottage. I had not packed for spending the night out in the woods. I would surely be too cold if I couldn't find the cottage. I played over all the details the travel agent had told me in my mind, but I was still absolutely lost. I was on the cusp of giving up when I saw something that was oddly familiar. I had wanted to see Mayan statues in their natural setting for as long as I could remember. Now I was ready to do so. The statues were just across a serene lake in southern Mexico. It was really more of a pond than a lake though. It was deep, sparkling blue. I could see the light of the moon just reflected in it. The moon was reflecting off the statues too. I was eager to reach the other side of the lake and see the statues in real life. As I approached the shore of the lake, I saw that there was simply no way that I could walk around to get to the other side. The shores were covered in thick thorn bushes. I brushed up against one and it sliced my skin open. Once again, I felt like I was truly lost. I had no idea how I could possibly get from this side of the lake to the other side to see the statues. Despair gripped my heart. I had made it through a long hike and I just wanted to see the beautiful artifacts up close. I found myself wondering what had I done wrong. After all, I'd realised so much about myself on this hike. What could possibly be holding me back from reaching the statues? Just as I was about to give up, I noticed a plank drifting on a part of the beach uninhabited by thorn bushes. I rolled up my pants and cautiously made my way through the water to the plank. I tested it to make sure that it was solid and I climbed aboard. Once atop of the plank, I noticed a long piece of wood that could be used as a paddle. I stood on the plank and dipped the makeshift oar into the lake. As I looked down to make sure the oar hadn't hit anything, I saw something that was truly amazing. My own face was reflected in the lake. It wasn't like the face I had seen in my bathroom mirror so many mornings, which was etched with confusion and disappointment. No, this was the face of a person who knew the right path in life. This was the face of a person who had overcome adversity and embraced real beauty. The reflection that I saw wasn't perfect, but it did make me proud. I found the final strength needed to row the plank across the water and land on the beach in front of the statues. As I looked at the beautiful Mayan artworks, I thought about how we all shape ourselves out of the tough spirits that we're given, much like the Mayans shaped these statues out of stone. The beautiful light was dancing in and out of the trees. There was something familiar about the light. I felt like I had seen this pretty little green sphere before, but I didn't know where. I decided to trust my instincts and head towards the green light. As I did so, my worries and apprehensions melted away. I felt that by trusting myself, I was making the right decision. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew I would get there. As I reached the cottage, I saw the green light perched over the doorway. I looked up at it, marvelling at how familiar it seemed. Right as I was about to shake it off as another occurrence, the light dived into my chest and I felt a warm glow. I had reached my destination. The docent who came up behind me while I was at the door frightened me out of my daydream. For just a moment, I had seen my bosses and my family gathered around that table. They were shouting orders to me. I wanted to tell them that I was here to relax and rejuvenate, but I couldn't find the words. I wanted to start on a new foot, but it was so difficult. Thankfully, the docent interrupted my train of thought and directed me towards the orchard. I enjoyed the rest of the day under the shade of an apple tree, with a refreshing, sparkling water in hand. The darkness in the train lifted after a few minutes. The fog had horrified me. I realised that I was most worried because I didn't know the path the train would take to the castle. If only I had known the path, I would have known that we were simply passing through something called a cloud forest. Right after the cloud forest, we had entered a long tunnel that carried us right into the castle's front gate. I realised that not knowing where the train was headed had caused me undue anxiety. The light was hitting the window just so the street outside the candy shop was reflected in the window. I could see myself, and I looked like a monster. I was disappointed in my absent-minded actions the night before. If only I'd remembered to set my alarm clock, I wouldn't be confronted with an image like this.